I was blinded. When I first got here, the cupola was just glass. And you'd be sitting there trying to celebrate Mass. You couldn't see the congregation. You couldn't read the words in the book. It was blinding. And I knew we had to do something to shade the priest so he could carry on with the Mass, but also to bathe the church in color. And good old Dale came along.
I remember watching someone trying to do the reading at the ambo and covering up their head like this so they weren't proclaiming the word. They were kind of hiding from that blinding light. And at the time when Monsignor expressed this at Mass, that there was a problem, he had also gotten a proposal for glass from a company. And at the time, my wife tried to contact him, and she said, maybe even though this is his business, doing stained glass, maybe you might not want him to do the glass, but he could at least be a counsel in the process. The process started with looking at that design that had been submitted, and it was nice. It would have allowed color to come into the church, but there wasn't any theology involved in it. And the price was really about 2.5 times what I thought it should be.
Very significant.
So we started having discussions about the theology, and Monsignor came up with the idea of the theme.
Creation, through new life, through the purple of aging, through the hint of the gold of Easter, bursting forth into the red of Pentecost, and then moving back into the cycle of life with the beginning of creation.
So that it's a continuous flow all the way around the space. I then, having looked at this light, thought instead of it being a detriment, that we should be able to make that an asset part of the design. And I started going up on the roof and putting little stickers on the clear glass, and coming down in the space to see where exactly the light was casting a shadow. And in that way, to sort of gear the design to connect to specific liturgies throughout the liturgical year. That process was available because stained glass is a slow process, and the way I work is also slow.
Very, very slow.
I start with listening, and then I start accumulating what I think are the materials. And there were glass companies all over the world, but I wanted very specific things. And as I was doing that, I had enough time to start mapping the light in the space. Today, of course, with digital technology, there's probably a program that you can use to just automatically do all of that mapping, but I was doing it mechanically. I was climbing up on the roof every week or two and seeing...
We had to replace the roof.
Eventually, I came up with this flowing, apparently simple flowing pattern, and made it so that it didn't have a lot of imagery that would detract from the liturgical action that was going on underneath it, but still had the capacity to project light into the space. And at the same time, nobody had to shield their eyes when they were doing the readings anymore.
At Easter, a golden bath of light on the sanctuary. At Pentecost, bursting into red. In the normal times of the year, the color of green, which is the color for the ordinal times of the year, bathes the sanctuary. At times, a blue light will light up the baptismal fount. It brought a living, moving art to the sacred space. Genius.
It was, I have to say, it was always collaborative, though. That Monsignor and I had long discussions about the theology. We still have long discussions about theology.
Endless.
I was able to make some really nice things happen with the light. During Lent, the light, the purple and gold light tracks across the altar platform week by week during Lent, and then raises up onto the reredos at the conclusion of that liturgical season. And an interesting story, at the Feast of the Baptism of the Lord, blue light that comes from the Mature Life and Works side of the cupola shines on the central hanging cross and then over to the font and shines on the Holy Spirit banner. And years ago, we had a vicar, Father James Atkins, and he was a very contemplative man. His homilies were usually almost always right out of Pius Parsh sermons on the liturgy. And he was standing there in the aisle and talking about how baptism and the baptism of the Lord is directly connected to Calvary. And above his head, in the copious incense, was this line of blue light of which he was completely unaware. But after that Mass, several people came up to me and commented on it. And there are all sorts of things that happen with the light that people will come up to me and say, "Dale, did you know?" And
people think it's an accident, and it was so beautifully thought out by this artist that it just seems like a vibrant, alive part of what we're celebrating in the liturgy.
I remember our first Pentecost, and Pentecost is difficult because the date changes, so the angle of the sun changes year to year. So I had to change the shape of that little bit of red so that most years it can connect. And Deacon Forrest was at the ambo. The altar is vested in red. The priest and deacon are vested in red, and the ambo was vested in the red light. It was for me, it was satisfying because it worked.
It didn't just happen. It was planned.
These panels may not appear so, but they're 4 feet by 7 feet. They're really large, but they're up high, so you might not get the scale of them. So it's not something that I could install by myself, and we hired professional glaziers to help with that. They had
What's a glazier?
A person who puts glass in.
Oh. Why don't they call him a person that puts glass in?
We just did.
Oh.
Anyway, they had 7 levels of scaffolding, and they had it tied off, and when they built the scaffolding, they put a level on each leg and made sure that it was even so. 7 levels of scaffolding, each one moves a little bit. By the time you get up to the top, it was rocking. I was not comfortable being up there, but I had to go up and inspect the installation as it was going on.
Oh, ye of little faith.
And I was white-knuckling it, and they said, "Dale, don't worry about it, It's rocking, that's fine. It's when it stops rocking that you have to worry." In constructing the glass, it's a very large panel, and I had to extend the tables that I build the glass on to make sure that I had enough room so that I could flip them over and solder the backside and put the rebars on the backside as well. And rebars is another problem. Because the windows are so large, lead is always a soft material, and it'll have a certain amount of flex. And so over time, you've seen old churches where the windows are kind of bowed out. They're literally collapsing under their own weight. So we put rebars on. So these panels have not had any of those problems since 92, 93. Yeah, we haven't had any problems because they were structurally a little bit over-designed.
You know, the professionals think of everything. One of the little things that amazed me, I would never have thought of it, but that's why we had you. In all the stained glass windows you see, they were put up against the existing glass, and so that humidity would not build up in it, he had to put little holes throughout the actual stained glass so that they would breathe, not fog up and lose their color.
So they're in the corners at the bottom and corners at the top, so that it forms convection as the air that's sandwiched in between heats up. It has somewhere to go, and new air comes in underneath.
He does good work.
The other thing in the cupola, though, is that occasionally there will be liturgies in the evening or at night. And so glass was chosen that has some opalescence in it, some streaks of white, so that at night, looking up at the glass, when the lights are on inside the space and there's no light outside of the space, you still get the movement, the flow, because you can see that white streaking instead of just black glass.
And the color is so warm and inviting that it's just another way of putting a welcome mat out on the street to welcome people into the worshiping community. It's really a very warm and beautiful sight at night. The parish was a lot smaller then. And even though Dale's price was 2 or 3 times less than other companies that could have come in, the price for an emerging, growing parish was staggering. And so we had to do it in phases. We put up what we could afford. And so it was a process gradually unfolding, which amazingly added to the excitement and the enthusiasm to finish the project. So it actually helped open pocketbooks. These were all done by donations. It didn't come out of the church collection. We presented the plan to the parish, and we said, if you like it, the way to vote for it is to contribute to it. And God bless them, but we were a lot smaller than we were later on. And gradually, over how many years would you say? 3 maybe? This and the window?
Oh, yeah, 3 years.
Yeah, it happened.
And it was
Dale
interesting.
And God did it. And the generous parishioners.
That as I was nearing completion of one segment, the funds were available for the next segment. And we never slowed down, but it was just kind of paced out, and people came through.
Let the world know this is an incredible community of Christians, just a family.